Jewish mother knocks on her son's door and says, Maishi, it's time to go to shul, it's 10 o'clock. And he says, Mom, I hate shul, I can't stand shul. She's like, Maishi, come on, what's your issue? You go to shul every week. He says, you don't understand, everybody makes fun of me, nobody likes me. And she says, Maishi, come on, you gotta go to shul. Why, Mom? And the mom says, first of all, you're 45 years old. Second of all, you're the rabbi. Okay, we will continue in Siman Beis, chapter 2 in the Shulchan Aruch. We will review the points that we discussed last week and continue from where we left off, which was in discussion of shoes. So far we explained last week, we started going into, after discussing the laws of tznius and modesty upon getting dressed, last week we went into how to get dressed. And we explained two things. Number one, in detail, number one, that a person should not be dressed sloppy or with clothing inside out for two reasons. One is so he doesn't look belittling and belittle the Torah, Masane Hashem, cause others to dislike or have disheartened feelings towards Judaism. And number two, based on Kabbalah, clothing affect you. You are what you wear, and when you wear it inside out, you lose some of the makif effects of the clothing. So therefore we said all clothing should be worn the right way, even undergarments that people can't see and will not out versus the shirt in. It's somewhere the shirt out versus in. So there were two different shmuas. So I asked Rabbi Label Groner if he heard anything about this shirt in versus out, and he said he's never heard any discussion on this in his life. So he was unaware of any of this in versus out business.
Okay.
Ah?
I say mine is out and always is. Then there's the question, minhag tzfat, even that it's perfectly acceptable, even within the Haredi community.
Well, it depends. If you're wearing a white dress shirt like this, it's not so acceptable to wear it out.
If it's flat on the edges, yes. If it has a tail, no.
If someone would show up in Manhattan to a business meeting with his white shirt out, he would probably be looked on like, how can I do a deal with him? It's not considered a normal way of dress.
Right.
Now, I was told that not only does it have to be out, but the corners also have to be out, because it says that you have to sit it on the corners.
Right. So you don't need the corners out for that. You just have to make sure it's on the corners, which is accomplished by having them tightened in a certain way.
Yeah.
By the Chabad tzitzis, it's for sure fulfilled because we have the two holes in the corner and it's not in a loop like yours. But by that one, it would only help if you pull it up to the left side. Anyways, we'll discuss this in laws of tzitzis. I just wanted to bring that up. That was his response. Other people who I turned to did not give a response yet, and if they do, I will update everybody. We then went into a discussion of right versus left, putting on the right, regarding clothing and how to get dressed and get undressed, and a lefty, and chesed over gvura, and what to wear first, pants versus shirt. So now we're up to shoes. This is what we got up to. We already read it inside the Mechaber. This is really the case scenario that the Mechaber, This is really the case scenario that the Mechaber discussed in a Shulchan Aruch, that when a person puts on the shoes, he should first put on his right shoe, and then he said you should go ahead and tie the left shoe, and when you take it off, you take your left shoe off first. So let's see further details regarding this from the Alte Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So the Alte Rebbe states in chapter 2, halacha 4, both in the Kama and Basra, that when putting on shoes, one is to honor his right side, and therefore he is to first place on his right shoe without tying, and only then wear his left shoe. This is the exact ruling of the Mechaber, just as we stated, and it's part of the mitzvah of honoring the right. And then he discusses regarding tying the shoes, and here we have a few novel ideas that the Alte brings that is not written in the Mechaber. It says like this: if one's shoes have laces, then you're to put on the right shoe without tying it, and then put on the left shoe. So the fact that you are going to be tying your left shoe first, as we'll see, will not change the order of which shoe to put on first. So you're always going to be putting on the right shoe first. You then put on the left shoe, and you tie the left shoe, and in return you tie the right shoe. What's the reason this is done? The Mechaber did not make mention, but the Achrayim do. The Alter Rebbe explains that the reason why we do this strange order of first right, which is not strange, that's going with protocol, but then wait with the tying, and only after you put on the left you tie, is because we want to honor the side which belongs to the tefillin. We know that we put on our tefillin on our left hand. I'll discuss lefties soon. I will.
Okay.
We put on our tefillin on our left arm, and since that's the arm or side designated for tying, so to respect that and honor that, we thereby also tie the left shoe first. He says like this: though when placing on or removing shoes, honor is given to the right side, nevertheless by tying shoes that have laces, honor and precedence is given to the left, as the left arm was honored by the Torah to have the tefillin wrapped on it. The Torah honored it. The Torah said, Yad Keya, Yadcha, Yad Keya, the weaker arm. That's one reason. Another reason. Alternative, the reason is because the Jewish people merited the mitzvah of tefillin through the shoelaces which Avram refused to take from the Sodomite people after winning the wars. Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin 99a states that in merit of the shoelaces that Avram refused to take as booty from the spoils of war when he fought on behalf of Sodom, you remember the 4 versus 5 kings? So amongst the 5 kings was the Sodomite king, the king of Sodom, and there was a lot of spoils that Avram could have rightfully taken for himself, including these shoelaces. And since he didn't even take the shoelaces, even something as simple as a shoelace for his poor warriors that now have ripped shoes due to the war, he didn't take. In merit of that, he received the mitzvah of tefillin. So we see a connection, because the first answer of the Alte Rebbe just, it's interesting. Okay, tying tefillin, tying shoes, but here we have a direct connection. The Gemara in Chulin says that it's directly connected. In merit of not taking the shoelaces, we receive the mitzvah of laces, the tefillin straps. So therefore, that's why we honor together. This second reason is recorded in the Levush.
The right order of things. The tefillin mitzvah came in the Torah many generations after Abraham being born.
Right, but it was already merited for us to receive it due to that action. All right? Okay. Now, based on this, the Alte Rebbe learns in the Madura Basra, this is not agreed upon by everybody, as I'll soon explain, that it's not specifically limited to shoes that we precede tying to the left, but in truth, anything that requires tying. So anything that requires tying, we always precede the left first. So what would be some examples of that? So you have some people who have sleeves who have like a knot over here that you can tie. You know, like a bow at the end, maybe a woman. Well, we'll discuss women soon regarding tefillin. Obviously, don't wear tefillin. So that would be an example where you should do the left first. Some Poskim say even buttons is like a tie, and you should button your left sleeve before your right sleeve. And so on and so forth. A lot of some of the Hasidic garments of the pants that they wear have ties at the end. They have like little ties. No, one second. So they too would precede the tying of their left over the tying of the right, based on this ruling of the Alte Rebbe. Not everyone agrees. Again, in the Madura Kama, the Alte Rebbe did not write this. This is a novelty of his later version of a Shulchan Aruch. And the Mishnah Berurah explicitly writes that it's limited specifically to shoes. So we see that this is under debate, under dispute, whether it belongs to all tying that we honor the left, like tefillin, or only to shoes.
Did the Chofetz Chaim have both versions?
I think so. I assume so. I believe so, but I can't say that for a fact because I don't remember at the moment when it was published, the second version, the exact year, if there was a difference, but he should have had it, yes. The Alter's opinion is not a lone opinion. The Shulchan rules the way, the Aruch HaShulchan, many places can rule the way, but it is something under debate whether you have to proceed for tying all left areas or just the idea of the shoelace, which, as the Levush writes, right, that specifically we found a connection between the shoelaces and tefillin, so that's why they are attached. Okay, what do we do with a lefty? What does a lefty do? So we know a lefty puts on his tefillin on his right arm. So first let's deal with what which, and as you see from last week already, it gets so confusing with lefties in halacha of what to do. So last week we already explained what part of the body he should precede, his left or his right, and we said it's really a machlekes. According to Kabbalah, even a lefty precedes his right because the right is chesed, and that is always chesed. So here too.
I mentioned this before some years ago. I'm switch-handed, which is something
Right.
different than both of those.
Right.
So it's even more complex. So
Right.
I put my tefillin on my left.
Right, okay. 1 second. So, so what we said was that according to one approach, you're supposed to always put it on the right, even a lefty. According to another approach, so thereby the shoes he would also put on his right foot first. But according to the other approach, which we brought from the Alte Rebbe and the Shulchan Aruch and the Tzemach Tzedek, one should, a lefty goes by his stronger side of the body, which is his left side. So according to them, you would put the left shoe first. So we said this is a non-arbitrated argument, and just a person, whatever he chooses to follow, should be consistent with one of the opinions. So that settles at least the idea of which shoe to put on first. It's unsettled. It's under debate. Now, regarding the tying, this also enters us into a big halachic balagan, confusion. We'll first say the Mishnah Berurah's approach, which is quite simple. The Mishnah Berurah holds in this situation, the Alte Rebbe doesn't discuss it. He doesn't discuss a lefty here. The Mishnah Berurah holds in this situation, you have to be, we follow the tefillin. So if you are left-handed, and therefore you put on your tefillin in your right, then you will tie your right shoe first. So since he says always honor the right, even by a lefty, so this lefty would put on his right shoe, tie his right shoe, put on his left shoe, and then tie his left shoe. That's the Mishnah Berurah. Other Poskim argue, the Shari Tshuva has a whole discussion here of left-footed versus left-handed. And it gets really confusing because if a person is left-footed but right-handed, or left-handed but right-footed, what should he do? So I think it's a good idea just to choose the Mishnah Berurah's arbitration here. It's just simpler, makes perfect. And the other approach is very complex to follow and figure out. But this matter is under debate. Doesn't discuss a lefty. In other areas, he discusses preceding the left side, not regarding this chapter, but in other areas. Until Shadayim, other areas. So we derived from there, but he doesn't discuss the tying part. Okay.
But he does connect the tying to
Tefillin.
tefillin.
Absolutely.
So
That's the svar of the Mishnah Berurah. So that would go in line with the Mishnah Berurah's psak, correct?
Mishnah Berurah says a lefty puts the
You follow the tefillin. So if he puts on his tefillin on his left arm, he should tie his right arm. Sorry, if he puts his tefillin on his right arm, he should tie his right shoe first.
put his right shoe first.
Yeah.
Put his right shoe first and then tie it.
Correct. Yeah, bottom line is that whatever you do, no matter how you mix it up, somebody will say it's okay and somebody will say it's not okay. No matter what you do, there's going to be a problem. But as we said, stay consistent. You pick an opinion. The Mishnah Berurah here is a very clear and logical opinion, and we can adapt that for the lefties. Regarding women and children, there's a debate amongst today's poskim regarding if this aspect of the halacha of tying applies to them at all, as they don't wear tefillin. If a woman doesn't wear tefillin, then why should she have to precede the tying of her left shoe? Maybe she should precede the right shoe, like we always precede the right. So practically this matter, as I said, is under debate, but it does make sense that they would follow the same as a man, as A, no difference was said in the Shulchan Aruch, and B, it's not just the idea that you're fulfilling the mitzvah, but it's the idea that the mitzvah exists. The mitzvah exists. Even by women, the mitzvah of tefillin exists. They're not doing it, but it exists. The concept of the mitzvah exists in the Torah. And the Torah gave the left precedent, so therefore that is the stronger leaning side to arbitrate that they should tie their left shoes first, just like a man.
isn't it also that the woman gets the mitzvah
From the husband, yes. Yeah, that's true. So maybe the husband should tie your shoes.
Wait. So it's right, you should tie her shoes. It's
Yeah.
right shoe first.
According to Mishnah Berurah, right shoe and then tie right. You're asking for a lefty for yourself, yes.
No, I'm talking now for women.
For a woman, for a righty woman would put on her right shoe first, like everyone else, and then her left shoe, and then tie the left, and then tie the right. Yeah.
Like that.
Okay, in the discussion of what to take off first, so we already read in the Mechaber, the Alte also brings it, you honor the right side by removing the left shoe first, right? A lot of people, why do we take off our shoes? Because they're annoying, they're bothering us, right? Usually that's why we take them off. So we want to free the bondage, free the foot from the bondage first. Who should get the, so if we take off from the left, it would be honoring the left. However, nonetheless, having shoes on is also a matter of respect. It's also you're putting on clothing, it has the Orach. So bottom line is that when a person comes to take off his shoe, if you are a righty, right, as we discussed, you would, according to everyone, you would first take off your left shoe, and by leaving the makif on your foot for longer, you would be respecting your right side. If you're a lefty, then you would again be under the same debate we said, and you just stay consistent with whatever you do. The one case in which we would change this order is when you're taking off your shoes for the sake of a mitzvah. When you're taking off your shoes for the sake of a mitzvah, like to go to duchen, or kohen, you should take off his right shoe first. As then he's honoring his right by removing the shoe first. He's doing the mitzvah. That's what some Poskim record, that whenever it's for a mitzvah, that's what should be done. A change should be done in the order. Regarding which shoe to untie first, so it doesn't say. There it doesn't say. It says what shoe to remove first, but which shoe to untie first. The Poskim of today discussed it, and bottom line is there is no arbitration, so you can do whatever you want. No, I'm talking about anybody. The same way we had an order of what shoe to put on first and what shoe to remove first, what shoe should you untie first?
Well, if you're going to take off your left shoe first, you're going to untie your left shoe first, of course.
You don't have to. You can untie your right shoe, then untie your left shoe, then remove your left shoe. So bottom line is, however, as I'm saying, there is no arbitration here, and therefore, whatever you do, just stay consistent. Okay. We're going to move off from the shoes. One second, I just want to find where we wrote the necessity of even. 1 second. Oh, the importance of wearing shoes. That's our final discussion here. No, this is Alte Rebbe based on the Magen Avraham in chapter 2. So the Gemara in Psachim 113b says, the one who does not place shoes on his feet is considered excommunicated from Hashem. Put in Chayim. It emphasizes the importance of wearing shoes. Now, why is wearing shoes so important? Now, I think most people, especially in Western society, all wear shoes. Nobody wants to walk around without shoes and damage their feet. However, back in the day, it was more common for people to walk around barefoot, especially, let's not forget, it was a lot harder to purchase shoes, a lot more expensive back then, and all clothing in general than it is today. And being that that is the case, there were people who would forego the shoes, or they would have shoes without soles. So they were in essence walking on the floor. Now, why do we say they're excommunicated? The reason is brought down is because a person's foot and the earth is a magnet to each other for klippus. Person touches his foot, we'll learn in chapter 4, he has to do natilas yadayim. Because the ruach ra, there's an evil spirit that hangs out by the feet. Ever wonder why the feet is the only part of our body that has the worst smell, scent? So we can explain it scientifically and medically, but the reason is also due to the spiritual basis, that it's a place of abode of ruach ra, a bad spirit, a bad smell. And so when a person walks on earth, the attraction to the evil is a lot greater, and that's why the Talmud gives such an extreme statement about such a person. And then continues and says that a person should even sell all that he owns, even the wall of his house, in order so he put shoes onto his feet. Shoes are important, so having good quality shoes, even if you have to, refinance your home.
But don't sleep with your socks on before you do
That unless you have some things you want to forget. Right? We said it's a school for forgetting.
The day of being grounded was actually walking barefooted so that you allow yourself to ground.
Right. I studied that in karate. We learned about that and channeling energy and grounding. But I don't know if they're referring specifically to outside, walking around barefoot outside. That's not what we learned in our karate classes. In any event, okay. So Judaism has a different approach.
Going to the beach? Going to the beach?
Oh, you can walk barefoot on the beach. That's just like we said earlier. Anywhere where that's the accepted, that's the accepted. But when it's accepted that way, then so here's talking about people just walking today. If you saw somebody walking around in the middle of the street here in Tzfas without shoes, without socks, you'd think of the guy as weird. You would think of the person as very strange.
Not in spot.
You would, even in Tzfas. On the beach, I agree with you. You wouldn't think of the person as weird, but in the middle of the city, the person walking around without shoes. I remember once in Jerusalem, there was a girl walking around barefoot without shoes. And everybody was talking to people. One person said, I'm going to call the police. Maybe she's homeless. It was like it became a spectacle. Yeah. Okay.
You said you can't touch your feet without saying you have to say
We wash our hands after touching the feet. That's what I
socks
mentioned.
included?
No. Feet. The actual feet. Yeah. The actual feet themselves.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Anywhere on the feet, Anywhere on the feet. We're going to go into that in chapter 4. Okay, moving off from shoes, we're now going to go into dress code. The halachas regarding dress code are actually past so far what we discussed, which is really not dress code, but how to get dressed and how to get dressed in a modest manner. That is in our chapter 2, while dress code really skips to Yeridea, chapter 178. That's where the laws of the Jewish dress code actually are discussed. And there's a few aspects of the dress code of a Jew. Obviously, we have the laws of tznius, where it covers the body. That pretty much was already discussed in our chapter, and it's discussed in other areas regarding women. That's not what I'm referring to in that we're going to go into now. This is more the style of clothing and the color of clothing. And what it says is as follows. Obviously, there's a number of halachic issues that could come up with a person's garments, such as shatnez, which is its own discussion. Beged isha, wearing the garment of a woman, or one wearing the garment of a man. And another one is wearing goyish clothing. We've heard that concept. As little kids, we were brought up, don't wear goyish clothing. What is?
Have we defined that?
Oh, that's why I'm here. What are goyish clothing? What does that mean? What's the issue? So we have a mitzvah in the Torah, b'chukosayim leiselechu, do not go in their statutes, do not follow the ways of the Gentiles. Now, that includes any action which Gentiles do for the sake of what I'm about to say. Obviously, we cannot say anything a Gentile does, you can't do as a Jew, because then you'll be following the ways of the Gentiles. So Gentiles go to the bathroom. Jews cannot go to the bathroom. Gentiles breathe. Jews can't breathe, obviously. Gentiles go to work. Jews can't go to work. What is the meaning? So it's referring specifically to actions or customs or styles of a guy which are done without any logical reason. Now, what does that mean without any logical reason? It's either attributed to pagan practices, to ideologies that are rooted in idolatry, that they're doing this strange code of dress based on idolatry, or it's based on, to elicit the Yetzer Hara, it's based on the idea of being not tznius. So if the wording of Shulchan Aruch is pompous or immoral, so we have basically three things that will determine if the act that they're doing, that the Goyim are doing, is arrogant, is immoral, or is done for no reason at all, completely illogical, which is then suspected to be rooted in Avodah Zarah, that's when a Jew cannot copycat, cannot do it. So, for example, the Mechaber, we don't have an Alte Rebbe here, this is in the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch, he writes the following. It's forbidden for one to follow the path of Gentiles or try to be similar to them, and therefore one may not wear clothing which are designated to be worn only by Goyim for pompous or immoral purposes. Likewise, if the dress code has no logic behind it, is forbidden to be worn by a Jew. As I said before, is that in a case like that, we suspect that it's rooted in idolatry. If, however, there is a reason behind their custom of dress and it does not involve immorality, then it is permitted to wear it. So long as there's a reason, then it's okay. So based on this, we can start to define. We all know that clothing give definition of what part of society you belong to. We can argue on it, and we can protest it, we can not like it, but it's a fact. It's a fact that what you wear tells a lot about you to the world. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether you agree to that statement or don't agree to that statement remains a fact, that people judge you by the way you look. And therefore, if we know, for example, that wearing baggy jeans that contain chains and holes and tears is what's done in the ghetto, in the hood. So obviously that's not done for very moral purposes, wearing those type of clothing. It doesn't have a reason. There's no logical reason other than the immoral reasons, or showing that you're part of, you're part of this, the gang. So that's something that would be problematic in halacha for a person to wear. Now, to wear just regular plain jeans, so technically we don't have a halachic isser against wearing it, because the reason why Goyim wear jeans is because it's a great work clothing that doesn't tear. There's a logic behind it. It's nothing to do with immoral behavior. It has nothing to do with pritzos, nothing to do with arrogance. It has nothing to do with Avodah Zarah. It has a very logical reason. So minadin, there is no prohibition in wearing jeans. However, nonetheless, Jewish communities have customarily gone above and beyond this letter of the law and try to wear a specific dress code for Jews. So there's two things. There's what halacha prohibits, and then there's what the Jewish community has accepted upon themselves as the dress code for Yidden. For example, there's no halacha that requires you to wear hat and jacket, but Haredi Jews accepted that upon themselves as their code of God-fearing Jews. And therefore, it certainly enters into a minhag Yisrael, even though obviously if you don't wear it, you don't transgress an Isser. One of the examples that the Mechaber, that the Ramah here deals with, is work uniforms. Is a nurse allowed to wear the nurse uniform in the hospital? So he says yes, because the uniform is meant to tell people and allow people to know who are the nurses in the hospital. Who can they turn to? It's to give a specific dress code. So too, can you wear the gown when you're graduating college? Can you wear the graduation gown? The answer is yes, as it's a specific code of dress for the prestige of the event, and it's not something as we view as done for arrogance or done for promiscuity or chukei sagoyim. So that's the chiddush of the Ramah here, that it limits it to specific scenarios. But nonetheless, any type of clothing that we see is worn by Goyim and contains an immoral or pompous nature to it would be biblically forbidden for a Jew to wear. So that's something to be careful by clothing. Likewise, a woman who would buy not tznius clothing, it would fall under this biblical prohibition to wear such clothing. To buy such clothing and leave it in your closet doesn't transgress anything. You haven't worn it. But to wear it, that's when the transgression happens.
So the tznius laws also have another angle to them.
Absolutely.
Right? This is
A person can wear tznius clothing and wear it in a not tznius way. So they're not transgressing the clothing part, they're just transgressing the tznius part. But then you have clothing that are worn by Goyim. A lot of the women's clothing that are manufactured on earth are made in a way in order to entice the male. And so if they're made in a way that's contrary to Jewish law, then it would be a problem. to
That's
wear
the
it.
basic modesty law, though. That's
Correct.
That's modesty
Correct.
stuff. But now this other one, it's like dressing,
On the
modesty
other,
overlaps with dressing like a goy also then, right?
Mhm.
Modesty then, you're sort of over on two areas, this one you were talking about
Correct.
presently and the, okay.
there's a number of isurim that are relevant to dressing immodestly. The same would apply with a guy. If a guy wears immodest clothing that are made for those purposes, then as well it would fall under this. Okay, next is regarding the color of the clothing. So this is recorded in the Shach, in the same area in Shulchan Aruch 178 in Yeridea, that black colored clothing is the preferred code color for Jews, and that's why we wear black pants. Some people jokingly call it the penguins. You have a white shirt and black pants that a lot of you didn't wear, but this is rooted in this halacha that black colored clothing is considered modest and humble, and hence it is proper to be worn. This is the ruling of the Shach. The Shach brings a proof. How do we know this? Because it says in the Gemara, if somebody's evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, is getting the best of him. He's very tough and he's very convincing. And he's made the decision, he can't hold himself back, he's doing the sin. Says the Gemara, and the Rambam brings it down. Don't do the sin here, go run away to a different country, wear black clothing, and sin over there with your black clothing. Why the black clothing? Because the black clothing can entice and can affect the Jew to not give in to his evil inclination. It's a clothing of modesty. It's a color of modesty.
Where in the Gemara is this? Do you know?
Look in the Shach 178.3. I'm sure he'll give you the address.
178.3.
Red colored clothing. The same Shach discusses red colored clothing. We'll just give a short summary on this. Basically, Jews are accustomed not to wear red colored clothing for this is literally red, like this color, for a number of reasons. This goes for men and women, okay? And the reasons that are mentioned is because, number one, red is a color worn by Goyim for the purpose of frivolity. It brings up blood, brings up edem. Chassam Sefer writes, it's based on Sifrei Kabbalah, that the red color has an effect on a person's psyche and a person's personality to be Yadayim De'esa, red-blooded, to be more on the Gvura side. And therefore, Jews stay completely away from wearing it. In addition to the halacha that it's considered clothing that Goyim wear for the purpose of frivolity, it's also the tradition that we have from our ancestors that we do not wear these red clothing. So that's something that's a minhag Yisrael that we avoid. Regarding the price and style of the clothing. So the Kids Shulchan Aruch writes that a person should always go in the middle ground. You shouldn't wear clothing that are too cheap, and you shouldn't wear clothing that are too expensive, as that can lead to haughtiness, and while cheap clothing can lead to being disparaged in the eyes of others, so a person should have average price clothing, with one exception. The Arizal says that one should purchase for his wife even very expensive clothing. The Arizal himself, who was not a rich man, it's written in Shara Mitzvahs, Parshas Eikev, that even though for himself he would buy the normal clothing on the market, for his wife he was very careful to purchase the best quality and most extravagant garments, obviously tznius ones, that were available. And he says, even if you couldn't afford it. Wow. Don't tell this to the women.
Did he give a reason for this?
The reason, shalom bayis, that's the reason. Keep his wife happy. A man has a chiyuv, an obligation as part of his ksuba of she'er, ksus, v'ayna. One of the three biblical obligations a man is liable for his wife is to provide her with clothing. So he can be yotze and buy the cheapest clothing, or he can buy more expensive clothing. So that result chose to be mahader in the mitzvah. Same way people buy $500 esrogim, that result says you have to be mahader and also be an adam l'chaverei. So I'll buy the most expensive clothing for my wife. Hider mitzvah is not just with a person's personal mitzvahs, right? Also she'er, which is clothing for the wife, is part of the biblical liabilities that a man has. Okay, we're now moving on to the next the last Seif, Siv Vav, so that covers everything in Siv Gimel through Hay. We're now in Siv Vav. We read this inside last week, and we mentioned that the Mechaber here mentions three things. He discusses here about wearing a yarmulke. He says, a person should not walk 4 amos with an uncovered head due to the honor and respect of the Shechina. He discussed also how a person should be walking. Right here. Sifav. Right? Also, the skuf person cannot walk with an upright back, and a few other things in the Ramah, which we'll get to. So let's go into the yarmulke. There's a lot to discuss here regarding the yarmulke, and we'll mention some of the things we will be going into. Number one, what is the source for wearing a yarmulke? Where does it come from? Who started it? Ever wonder that? Where did it come from? Did Avram Avinu wear a yarmulke? Moshe Rabbeinu, whose birthday in Eretz was today, did he wear a yarmulke? Where does wearing a yarmulke come from? Why do we do it? How important is it? What are all the reasons? Is it an actual obligation? Is it just a custom? Is there room to be lenient on the custom? What about children? Does it help to put your hand on your head? What's the definition of a kosher yarmulke? Does it have to have a hashgacha? Well, all these different details. So let's begin. Our first source of the yarmulke is recorded in Maseches Kedushin 29b, in which it states that it was customary that after marriage people would wear a kerchief on their heads and not walk bareheaded. So that seems to be our first source, and the source seems to reveal a few important factors, historical factors. Number one, it seems to be telling us that before marriage people did not cover their head. That's what it sounds like. It says when people got married, only then would they wear this kerchief, but until then they wouldn't. Likewise, it doesn't make any mention of it as a matter of obligation, but just as a custom. And the people would do. This was the status quo of what people, this was the new dress code of after people got married. Similar to a married woman. A woman would get married and she'd cover her hair. The husband would cover his head.
Is it like in both sexes?
This is referring to a man.
Just a man.
This Gemara is referring to a man, yes. On the other hand, one can argue and say that, well, let's first bring a few pages later in Kedushin 33a, it says that Torah scholars were accustomed to cover their heads, implying that the idea of covering head was only done by Talmidei Chachamim. So first it says married, then it says Talmidei Chachamim. So one way of explaining these sources is that it's referring to two different types of head coverings. We have the yarmulke, and then we have the hat on the yarmulke. So it could be that everyone would wear a regular plain yarmulke, but that extra covering, like a hat or a glima, that was specifically worn after marriage or by the Talmidei Chachamim. So it's unclear from the Gemara. We don't know what covering exactly it's referring to. Obviously, in their days, they did know. But when we read the Gemara, we don't have a clear understanding of that. We have another source in Shabbos 156, Kuf Nun Vav, Daf Kuf Nun Vav. There it says that the mother of Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak was strolling around her town, and someone went over to her and told her, "We have a message to you from the astrologers. The astrologers have said and seen that the baby who you will give birth to, as she was pregnant visibly, will be a very rowdy child, a rebellious child, cause lots of problems for his teachers and all of mankind." So obviously she was frightened out of her wits after hearing this message. And she asked the Chachamim, "What can I do to try to prevent this from happening?" And they told her, "Be careful to cover your child's head." And she was very makbid to cover his head. If he was ever playing ball and his yarmulke fell off, she was right behind him, covering his head with a yarmulke. And he ended up being this born individual who was destined by the astrologers for infamousy, became the famous Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak, one of the great Amoraim, Rabbi Nachman. So we see the effect of covering the head can change even a person's astrologic disposition. We have another famous source in Maseches Kala. Maseches Kala, which is one of the addendum Talmudic tractates that are printed in addition. I believe it's in the back of Nezikin that it's published. It's not one of the regular 60 Masechtas. We don't know exactly when it was published. It was published for sure after the Talmudic times, but maybe Rabbanan Savarei, which is within the next 100, 200 years, or in the times of the Goyim. So there it says, a story that one time there was a nice Jewish yingle that was walking around without a yarmulke. And he passed three of the great sages. It was Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Lazar, and Rabbi Yeshua. They saw this little boy walking around without a yarmulke, and they began to discuss with each other the lineage of this child. Says the Maseches Kala, Rabbi Lazar said that the child must be a mamzer. Rabbi Yeshua said he must have been conceived when his mother was a nida, and Rabbi Akiva says it was both combined, mamzer and ben nida. The Gemara concludes, a baskol then came from heaven and said, "Blessed be God, the God of Israel, for revealing his secrets to Rabbi Akiva, the son of Yosef." That indeed this child was a ben mamzer, was a ben nida and a mamzer. So we see here the Gemara, even though we don't have a direct quote from the Talmud saying that a person is obligated to wear a yarmulke, we certainly find its very high significance to the point where it changed the disposition of Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak, and the Chachamim were able to see into a person's impure lineage due to the fact he didn't wear his yarmulke. Interestingly, we have in the Sefer Toldos Yeshu more details to this story. It becomes quite juicy over there. Toldos Yeshu was a pamphlet printed at least prior to the 1100s. We don't know when, how long, much prior, but definitely before the 1100s. Some say they found manuscripts already dating back to the 400s, so it's very, very old manuscript. And there's a few different versions, but most versions contain this story. Maybe all versions do. I know for sure most versions do. And that is that this story actually happened to Yashka. This little boy was Yashka. And the story contains some more details. Isaish, Yashka was a nice Jewish boy in Talmud Torah, and he was playing ball in Yerushalayim. That's what it says. He was playing with the Kader in Jerusalem. He was in yeshiva, Yeshua ben Prachna. He was in Yeshua ben Prachna's Talmud Torah. And he lost the ball, and he threw his yarmulke out of disgust for the game. And then the three sages began discussing when they saw Yashka throw his yarmulke. And this is where Maseches Kala comes in. One said he's a ben nida, ben mamzer, and Rukiva said both, and the baskol came out. And they decided to then summon this little boy Yashka and ask him, where are you from? Who's your family? Who are your parents? And he gave them information. And he said that his parents live in Nazareth, Nazareth. So Rabbi Akiva paid a visit to Nazareth. He came to the address he was given, knocked on the door of his mother, and told his mother, whose name was Miriam, please tell me all the information about your son. We need to know, it's very important. She made him swear that he wouldn't tell anyone, but he swore in a halachic way that didn't make him bound to the swear. And she told him the whole story, that she is really the wife of individual A, and she was, in other words, engaged, kedushin, to individual A. They never consummated the marriage, and she went off with individual B, whose name was Yosef Pandra, who was a guy, and she married this guy, even though she was an Ashes Ish without a get. And she basically admitted to everything that Yashka had, that he had said. He was a ben nida and he was a mamzer.
So she was Jewish.
She was Jewish, yes. Miriam was Jewish. So when he heard this, he came back down to Yerushalayim and he gave Yashka a special haircut, the mamzer haircut. Special haircut that mamzerim used to be given. And he gave him a special haircut so everybody would know his identity. So the mamzer wouldn't intermingle with the rest of Jewry. So in any event, we see that a side of a person who, of course, went off into infamousy and all the terrible things he caused for Klal Yisrael, had its expression in the fact that he didn't wear his yarmulke. So we already see from very Talmudic sources of the importance and significance of wearing the yarmulke. I'm going to deal with a topic that I said last 15 minutes we're going to try to dedicate for a question. So we have that question. It was brought by one of the people here. But before we do so, I'll just say next week we will continue with the yarmulke discussion and cover greater details, whether it's obligation versus minhag, all the reasons behind it, various question answers relevant, as we said before.
Where in Shabbos Gemara, I think it is, maybe it's part of 156, it says, cover your head so you'll fear God. You know that?
Yeah, so that's where it's learned from. Yeah, it's not Gemara.
You didn't quote that particular line, but
It's with the story. It's what's going to make Rabbi Nachman straighten out. Okay.
scriptural, there's not a scriptural source.
We don't have a scriptural source now. No. We'll discuss more next week.
It's rabbinic, it's obviously.
Well, no, next week.
Oh.
It's more than just rabbinic. We'll go into it. Okay, so a question was raised regarding, now that we have a very complex business society where you can do business with people all over the globe, especially virtually, when you can just send cash from one account to another account. So a lot of questions come up regarding loans and interest with loans, ribbis. And there's a lot of things here that people aren't aware of because the laws of ribbis are very complex. The idea of when I lend you $100, don't take back $110, we all know. That's the simple. That's the ABCs of ribbis, which we all know. But the laws of ribbis goes way past that and goes into situations where if we don't actually learn the subject, we would have had no awareness that there is even an issue involved. Now, when we get to the laws of ribbis, eventually we will go through all those details, but I'm just giving now a showcase example of one of these halachas. Reuven meets Shimon. I'm giving a more complex case. Reuven meets Shimon in Eretz Yisrael. They are both tourists from the United States. Good friends, and what do you know? Reuven is short $100. He asked Shimon, do you mind lending me $100? Shimon says, I don't have any dollars with me, I only have shkalim. So he says, okay, you have 400 shkalim? So he says, I have 400 shkalim. He lends him 400 shkalim. Let's say, for argument's sake, the dollar is 4.0. He lends him 400 shkalim, and he tells him, you'll pay me back in the United States. When you get back, you'll come to my house, you'll pay me back the $100. So, peripherally, to the unlearned, this sounds like a case of absolutely no halachic discussion. He's borrowing 400 shekel, the equivalent of $100, and he's paying back $100. Problem. This is a case where there is a rabbinical prohibition of ribbis involved unless certain steps are taken. To understand this, we have to introduce the following. Biblically, ribbis only applies in the standard example I gave earlier. I am lending you 100, you are paying me more than 100. If you pay me less than 100, that's not ribbis, that's just called not paying the loan fully. But to give more is called ribbis. So that's standard, that's what it means. Now, where does ribbis go off the track of its biblical definition and start entering into different rabbinical definitions, as we have rabbinical ribbis in addition to biblical ribbis? That's in many complex cases where dealing with business. So I'll give an example. If I go into a store and I want to purchase a refrigerator. Refrigerator costs $1,000. And the guy says, pay me now, I'll send you your refrigerator in 2 weeks. Would there ever be a ribbis question involved in this transaction? Biblically, no. This is a sale. This is not a loan. This is a mechira. It's not a halva. if I pay you, this is your phone, how much did you pay for it?
800 shekels.
800 shekels. If I pay you 200 shekels for this phone right now, did I do ribbis because I got more than what I gave? Let's say right now it's worth 800 shekels, right now, on the market. Even though, let's make believe that's the price it would be sold for secondhand. Is it considered ribbis by you receiving less? Let's say you're in need of cash. You need cash right now. So you'll take whatever you can get. I'm offering 200 shekel, not a dime more. So is it considered ribbis by the fact that I'm receiving more? Of course not. That's called business. Business is the idea of selling and buying. And the seller and buyer can agree to whatever prices they want for whatever reasons they want, and there's no ribbis involved in the person who's selling receiving less than he could ideally receive for his money. And that's why you never have to go to a Rebbe and say, well, am I allowed to pay less than the market value? Because it's a sale and not a loan. However,
Isn't there something about a price and you can't go above it, a sixth?
correct, that's called a no, and only if there wasn't an agreement. But if there's an agreement, you know this is worth 800 shekel. I am offering you 200 shekel. If you agree, you agree. There's no halachic isur. By ribbis, even if we agree, the Torah doesn't agree. It makes no difference whether we agree. We can't say, well, I need the money, I'll be willing to pay you back $110. No, that's isur deraisa. You don't get to decide, the Torah decides. However, regarding a no, if you tell him I am making 200% on this sale, there's no no. You told him. If he decides, it's his decision. There's a lot of steps here. There's a lot of steps. So let's take. So we would no. So I'm just saying that it would sound like it's not a problem because it's a sale. However, rabbinically, this could be a shiloh of ribbis. And in other words, the Chachamim stepped in and said that even by a sale, in which it's not really a loan, it's a sale, it's possible for there to be transgressions of ribbis. When would ribbis be transgressed and how would it be transgressed? So that's in essence what we are here to figure out. So let's go back to our example of the refrigerator. The refrigerator is worth right now $1,000. In 2 weeks, a report came out from Samsung. Millions of people bought stock in Samsung. The Samsung refrigerator is now worth $1,250. So with your $1,000 that you paid, you're getting a $1,250 refrigerator. You just made $250. Now, if you receive that refrigerator that very day, a sale is a sale. The price was what you paid. But when are you receiving it? 2 weeks later. So what is this like? I lent you money, $1,000, to the seller, and he's now paying me back $1,250. So I'm taking ribbis of $250 rabbinically. And therefore this is usher to do unless the following conditions are fulfilled. What conditions must be fulfilled? The following are the conditions, and that is that the seller must have this in stock. If he has the Samsung refrigerator in stock, it doesn't matter where on earth he has it, but it's his already. It's not that he's buying it now from someone else. He already has it in stock. It is not a problem. If he doesn't have it in stock and he says, okay, pay me now $1,000, I will then order it from Samsung, it's a problem. You can't do it. If he's a guy, it's not a problem. This is with Jews, yeah? Ribbis is never usher with guy. But with Yidden, you'd have to tell the guy, listen, if you don't yet own it and you're going to have to order it, this with furniture also can happen. If he, I can't pay you before you have it in stock because if the price goes up. Now there's another way, there's another condition, and that is that you can't have any discussion in this transaction, even if he does have it in stock somewhere, you can't have any discussion with regards to that if the price goes up of the refrigerator, price goes down, it has to be, in other words, what are we considering it? We need to consider it as if right now you are already purchasing this fridge. So even if it goes up in 2 weeks from now, you already purchased it at this second. He already owned it. So it's as if you purchase it right now. That's why we require him to have it in stock. But if he doesn't have it in stock, then you're giving it to him now for the first time. Okay, so this is called Peres versus Matbeya, when you are giving money, Matbeya, to receive a product in return, Peres, then the person has to have, if you're giving him the money before he gives you the product, the person already has to own the product, if he's a Jew.
Getting the one, for example, the obvious example of payments where there's obvious interest, when you have to do payments, whether you're buying a car or a stove or whatever, and you got 12 payments, and there's going to be some interest involved with part of, he's going to make some interest on me.
Right, 100%. There's a lot of cases of ribbis that come up. Obviously, taking a mortgage or taking any loan with paying back, you need to do a heter iska. Yeah.
So even on a car or an oven or anything like that?
Of course. If you're going to be paying interest, you have to do a heter iska.
Your average price in
If the
Israel
person
for
is
selling
a Jew.
appliances, does
That I'd never ever allow payments on my credit card that take interest to a Jew. Absolutely not. That's why a person should be very careful. We're getting off subject. There's a lot to discuss here, but 100%. Anything. Usually, most places have what's called heter iska, which is a halachic, makeover for how to circumvent the problem of ribbis. But if they don't have a heter iska, then it's a problem of ribbis. So that's why a person should pay their chashmal on time. If you don't pay your chashmal on time and you're going to be paying more, you're paying ribbis. By you facilitating the payment of ribbis, you're also transgressing ribbis. So that's why the chatchila person should avoid getting into these problems.
So an Israeli credit card is a problem? Bank Lumi card that's a credit card?
Only if you're paying ribbis. I don't pay ribbis on my credit card.
When you buy something on credit, and they do charge you more, the place charges you more? No?
What do you mean? No. My credit card company pays the store, okay, that money. That's between him and them. It has nothing to do with me. I have to pay my credit card company. I'm not paying them anymore. I'm paying them exactly what the price was in the store. If I don't pay on time, then they will give me an interest fee. That's when it becomes ribbis here in Eretz Yisrael.
So it's like a 12-month period then. And you're not paying, as long as you pay your monthly payment?
Yeah, if you make your monthly payment, you don't delay payment, then you'll never end up paying interest. In Chutzlah, it's not a problem because it's going, but here in Eretz Yisrael, when you end up paying interest, you have to rely on heter iska, which they have, but it's not the most mahadran thing to rely on heter iska. Let's move on, okay? We have a few minutes left. It's not so simple because it's a government-run company, so the best thing is, as I said, the chatchila to avoid it. That's the best thing. Chatchila, Hashem should give all Jews the money to never have to pay their chashmal bills late. We have a small amount of time, short amount of time, so let's boil this down. Something very similar we have, so far we went from a loan, which is clearly deraisa, to a sale, which is possible derabanan, depending on the situation. And now we're going to go to another case, and then we can get to this case example of the lending. You like his phone, and you like his phone, okay? These are two different companies. This is an Apple, this is a Snapple. This is an Apple, this is a Samsung, okay? So this is $200, this is $100. And you guys want to make a switch. This is called Sa'ah versus Sa'ah. In a normal case, no ribbis involved. You can make the decision. You know this is 200, you know this is 100, and you agree to the switch. It's okay, go ahead, no problem. No one gets involved, no halachic issues. Now let's say you don't have the phone yet, but you want a phone right now. So you tell him, I am willing to give you a phone of $200 if you give me a phone of $100. If you give me this phone, this transaction. So here too, we require you to have this phone already now in order for this transaction to take place. Otherwise, it's ribbis, as if he lent you something and then you're giving back much more. Now, what if it's a case that I am lending you this, I'm giving you this phone, and you will purchase for me a new phone of this type in a month. I am lending you, meaning for keeps, okay, let's say, the case given the Gemara, a pound of flour, and you will pay me back a pound of flour. What if the pound of flour goes up? What if this phone goes up over the next month when you pay back? You end up paying more than originally set. So that is only, it's rabbinical, not a biblical problem of ribbis, because again, this is a sale, transaction. So rabbinically, however, they said you have to have some of that item in your possession in order to allow this to take place. So if you own some flour, but you don't own the amount of flour that you're asking to borrow from him, and that's why you're borrowing, then this can take place. Otherwise, it can't. So let's take those ideas and now go into money lending. So in a case where you lend me 100 shekel and I pay you back 100 shekel here in Israel, we're all good. There's nothing to discuss here. That's a case of a loan, paying back a loan, and what interest was there. Now you can't say, well, inflation, when I am paying you the 100 shekel, due to inflation I may be paying you less or more than what your 100 shekel was worth. That's nonsense. There's no halachic consideration of inflation, and we do not say that just because your buying power with your 100 shekel went up or down in this country, therefore I have to maneuver and change and alter my payment based on that. So that there's never a problem with. However, if in one country you borrow currency from another country, how is that currency viewed? Is it viewed as money, in which case we just said before, money for money is always never a problem. We never give it a halachic problem. Or do we view it as items, as a product, like a piece of gold? In other words, here in Eretz Yisrael, is a dollar bill viewed as a currency from Hilchos Rebbe's perspective, or is it viewed as a bar of gold, as a product? If I view it as a currency, then you can lend me 100 shekel with intent and agreement that I pay you back $25. Because right now, let's say, theoretically, right, that the shekel is worth, 4 shekels worth $1, so $25. It's just like me paying you back 100 shekel. So even if $25 goes up or goes down on the agreed due date that I have to pay you, we won't change that, just like we won't change my payment of 100 shekel if inflation causes a change in its value. However, if we say that the dollar bill is viewed as payers, is viewed as a product, let's go back to the store case. What do we say in the store case? When you're buying a product, you're buying right now $25 from me for your 100 shekel. So then I have to have already $25 available in my possession, for which is as if you bought that money now. And if I don't...
Anywhere else, anywhere in the world.
Correct, anywhere in the world, in your possession that you own, you have $25. If you don't have $25, I have 25 euro, I have 25 pesos, whatever you want to say, it won't help. You need to have, doesn't help the guy say, well, I own a refrigerator made by some other company. You know, you're buying a Samsung refrigerator of this model. You need to have this Samsung refrigerator of this model because he needs, the sale has to take place now. So you need to have already $25, physical $25 available. And if you don't, then we cannot, it's against the law, it's forbidden for us to make this agreement that you will lend me 100 shekel on condition I give you $25. However, so far we just said the two sides. We didn't say which side is right. It's a machlekes and Poskim. Some Poskim say, Rebbe Moshe Feinstein as well as the Shevet Levi, two big Poskim, that dollar bills is considered a world currency, and therefore it's considered a currency in Israel as well. It's just like the shekel. So you can lend shekel for the dollar or dollar for the shekel. Or you can lend dollar for the dollar. If I'm here in Israel and I'm lending dollar for the dollar, it's like you switching phones, but you don't have this phone now, you only can give it to him in a month. So if you're giving me $25 here in Israel, for me to pay you back $25 in a month, according to that opinion, it's okay. It's just like lending me 25 shekel, paying you back 25 shekel. But according to the opinion that says it's considered payers, which is the majority of Poskim, because the reasons behind Rebbe Moshe and the Shevet Levi and other Poskim who are lenient is the majority of Poskim argue on them because it's the reasons have a lot of questions, and therefore the mainstream opinion in halakha is not like their opinion, and that it is viewed as payers, as a product, and therefore even in Eretz Yisrael, even if you're lending me $25 and I'm paying you back $25, that can enter an isser of ribbis unless I already own $25. Again, why? Because if the market value of $25 goes up, which it may, versus the currency in this country, which is the shekel, then when he gave me $25, he gave me 100 shekel. When I'm giving him $25, I'm giving him 120 shekel. That's ribbis. It all depends on how we view the currency. So being that this is the case, the halacha is as follows. When you are in a country, you can only lend and pay back in the currency of that. You can only lend on condition to pay back with that country's currency. If you want to use other currencies in that transaction, either giving you a different currency then you have to already own a certain amount of, you have to already own the corresponding amount of that money that was lent to you. Now, it does not help to own it in the bank, as money in a bank is not money owned by you. Money in a bank is money owed to you. Again, money in a bank is not money owned by you, it's money owed to you. When you put money in your bank account, you are lending the bank money. We look at banks as they are the biggest lenders. No, banks are the biggest borrowers. We, the people, are lending money to the bank, and they have to pay us back. So even if you have $1 million in the bank, all you really have is $1 million IOU credit. But you don't own, no, that's how it's viewed legally and halachically. It's an IOU. They owe you money. If a bank goes bankrupt, do I have ability to go and take their building? The government gives you a certain cap of coverage, and after that, goodbye. Go cry, go cry about your fortune, your luck, your problem. So it's a loan. And being that that's the case in halacha, we don't view it as money that you own at the moment. So having dollars in a bank in dollar form doesn't help. That's why also regarding Yerusha, even though the Bechara gets a double portion, he does not get a double portion of money in the bank. So if a guy worth $30 million cash in the bank passes away, his Bechar will not get a double portion of that $30 million. He will get a single portion like every other son, because it's an IOU. So being that that's the case, if a person doesn't have $25 cash in his possession somewhere on earth that he owns, he cannot do this transaction from shekel to dollar. Now what happens if they did? They already did it. It happened. They didn't know. They did the transaction. They borrowed 100 shekel on condition to return $25. Whether this took place in Israel or took place in the U.S., because it's two different currencies. In the U.S., if you lent $25, everything's okay. Just like here, if you lent 100 shekel, 100 shekel, it's okay. But whenever you mix the two currencies, that's when the problem of ribbis begins. Because potentially, it can be worth more by the time you return, and then you transgress ribbis, rabbinically. So, in a situation, the person already went ahead and did so, what they have to do is pay the lesser amount of the two. In other words, that if right now when I'm coming to return the $25, the dollar went down versus the shekel, so meaning the shekel became stronger. So now 3 shekel buys $1 instead of 4. Then I'm going to pay him back in dollars based on the dollar rate for the shekel at the original time if I'm going to pay him back, so I owe 100 shekel, I'm going to give him back 100 shekel worth of dollars, not less and not more. Whatever is going to be the lesser amount, that's the amount that we give.
Adjust for what happened.
Yeah, you'll have to adjust. If there was an adjustment, which most likely there will be between the dollar and a shekel, even in a week, then you would always have to give, again, lechatchila, this shouldn't have been done, but it was already done. So in order not to transgress ribbis on either side, you would have to give whatever amount is less, in order so it shouldn't be considered that you gave him more. There is one way to circumvent the issue without owning dollars, and that's as follows. This is the conclusion. He lends me, let's go back to our case, the 2 friends. Ruvain tells Shimon, I heard I was in the shir and we spoke about ribbis, it's crazy, you can't really do that. You can't lend me now 400 shekel for me to pay you back $100 in New York. What we can do is like this. You'll pay me back 400 shekel. You'll give me now a 100 shekel loan, and I will pay you back 400 shekel. That's the deal. But I reserve the right to pay you back in dollars if I want to. You're allowed to pay back a loan in dollars. You can pay back a loan whatever shava kesef you want. Because in that case, I'm not depending the payment on the dollar. I'm depending it on the shekel, which is shekel for shekel. Now, if the shekel goes up, I can decide to give him in shekel, or I can decide to give him in dollar. I'm not liable for anything. But it gives me the ability and gives him the ability to know that when we return to New York, I can pay him back. I can choose to pay him back in dollars and not in shekel.
So then that's the way around it.
That's the way around it.
So how do you
Not to. We're going to go back to New York. He's going to look up how much is 400 shekel worth right now, and he'll pay him back in dollars, those 400 shekel. The agreement was to pay, in other words, the circumventing way is Don't agree to pay back in a different currency. Agree to pay back in the 400 shekel, whatever currency you got.
Yeah.
But you have the right, as any lender, as any borrower has the right, to pay back in whatever form you want. So what you're paying back, the physical thing you're paying back will be commensurate to the 400 shekel that you originally borrowed. So it doesn't matter if the dollar went up or went down. I don't care about that. It will always go by, I have to give you 400 shekel as it's worth right now. So I can pay you back 400 shekel worth of tissues. I can pay you back 400 shekel worth of dollars. And obviously I would follow the current market price of dollars.
When you gave it back.
Yeah, now when I'm giving it back, because I'm giving him back shekel. The agreement is to give him back 400 shekel. So if I give him back less than 400 shekel in dollar worth, I'm not paying him back the full loan.
Right. But more than that, you can't give them either.
Of course not. You can never give more. That's ribbis.
Right.
So again, to summarize, the two ways to do it is simply make the loan shekel for shekel, or in the United States, dollar for dollar. And then you can pay him back in whatever currency you want. Or to make the loan dollar for shekel or shekel for dollar, and you own already that amount of cash somewhere on earth.
Okay.
There's a few other conditions and for that to take place also, by the way. But that's just the short version. All right, so that summarizes it for